All right, folks, if you thought that was rough, I'm going to ask you to dig for what you got left. This is the final battle. Now, what we're about to look at in this video is something called a while loop. It may seem a little different or like it doesn't fit what we're talking about this week, but it relies on Boolean conditions. It models what I'll call behaviors. I'll start referring to this as a behavior modeling loop. Loops are things that essentially repeat instructions over and over and over and over until some condition is met. And that's the key word here, condition. When conditions are met, then we stop executing it. We do something else. So we are essentially going to get stuck in a loop, until such time that we no longer need to do that because some condition has now been set to false. So conditions always want to be true. That's something that I'm going to plant that we're going to look at on analog day and on our digital day and in the lab. Conditions will always want to be true. And in this case, we're going to see how that affects our flow of control. So the snake is back. And the snake is stronger than ever. But Ulysses still has his secret super attack. And it still follows the same rules that we programmed in our last video. However, we're going to see how we can use our loop to simulate what this actual combat might actually look like. It's not just going to be one attack and it's all over. There's going to be kind of like a thing going on here where we parry and riposte and we do all sorts of things. So we're going to see what it really looks like when the snakes and cats go at it. So the snakes are back, and they're more powerful than ever. Now, Ulysses and his friends, they can't fell the beast in one shot, but what they can do is they can keep working at the snake until the snake finally chooses to give up. And we're going to use a loop to model that. We're going to demonstrate that by repeating instructions in order to show how Ulysses gets more than one chance. He's going to be tenacious. He's going to be persistent, just like I'm asking you to be, and he's going to eventually, hopefully, win the day. So let's have a look at what it looks like when we actually throw a while loop in at this problem. So while loops start off the same way that if statements, that defs do, that the functions do. They start off with a while keyword, and this is what's going to start our loop. And what comes next is a condition. Now, as you might guess, the condition that we want is we want snake HP to be less than 0. So while snake HP is greater than 0, at any point, if we go back through the loop and we check out that snake HP is greater than 0, then we are going to keep going. So when it's less than 0, we should stop. When it's greater than 0, we should keep going. So we're going to ask here. We're going to say anytime that we come around, we're going to say we want to check out sidekick name as an input. We're going to say, all right, what is sidekick name? And we're going to go for sidekick type because, again, those are the two things that we're using to compare to find out who's actually showing up and who's helping Ulysses out. What is sidekick type? So we're going to keep asking these questions each time, allowing us to put in different values and find out what actually happens with Ulysses' attack. So here we're going to say attack value is equal to Ulysses' secret super attack. And we're going to pass sidekick name, or sidekick type rather, first, because notice our parameters are partner name. So sidekick type, and then sidekick name. And then we're going to take snake HP minus equals attack value, and we're going to find out what happens. But first, a word about what this loop is actually going to do. So in a while loop, we're looking at a difference in the flow of control. Kind of like when we were looking at functions, there's a different way that the program processes loops. And again, it's not a huge departure from understanding our top to bottom, left to right reading. It's just a different way that the program iterates, or again, loops over and over and over. That joke's not getting old, right? So just like you might expect, the while loop is going to keep going. And it's going to keep checking every time it runs through its sort of course of instructions if the condition at the top is true, if snake HP is in fact greater than 0. And if that is true, it's going to keep going. But the minute it gets back to the top of that loop and it says, well, snake HP is no longer greater than 0, we jump out, we go down to the snake defeated message because we in fact have invalidated the condition. We have decreased the snake HP value enough that it's less than 0. So do you want to go see if that happens? All right, while you were gone, I added some code. I want to see what's actually happening in the loop so I can be sure that what's happening is actually what I expect, and at least that I'm decrementing or decreasing the snake's HP over time. So let's see what happens when some friends show up. Of course, usually first on the scene is Claude. Now, Claude, not too strong, but thanks, Claude, for being the first vote. You're a Yeti. Doesn't necessarily matter to our structure. If we look at our if statement, we're not handling Yetis, we're only handling Claude. So we get 1 point on our snake's HP, which is not a lot, but thanks, Claude, for showing up. You did your part. So the next sidekick we get is Craig the Capybara, which is just a generic capybara, so we should get a 50, so we should see about a 959, and we do. So that we're seeing that we are actually making a change to the snake HP, and of course a rat shows up. So Gary Rat. Haven't seen Gary in a while. That's -1 again. Well, that's fine and well and good, but we want this over with. So we're going to call in the extra hero, Ulysses' best superhero friend, Captain Capybara. And boom, -42. The snake is defeated and our while loop stops, because the only reason we see this statement is because we've jumped out of the loop. And why have we done that? Well, -42 is less than 0, and we notice that our condition is that snake HP must be greater than 0 for the loop to continue, and the minute that it reaches back to the top of that loop, following the flow of control discussion we had when you left and came back, following that, well, it's not greater than 0 anymore. So we have to jump out and see the snake defeated, and we have done so. It is the final battle, and the snakes will never beat the cats again. So this really is a culmination of everything that we've learned this week. Things about conditions, things about making sure that values are or are not equal. What happens if they're not? What can we do? How can we make our programs powerful enough that we can repeat instructions until something is no longer true? These things seem small, and the way that these videos portray them are in somewhat simplistic examples that you can pause the video and go mock them up in your sandbox if you want to. However, we are going to get more complicated, but we're going to do it by degrees. And my hope is that by this week's lab, you're going to start to see some of the ways in which these smaller building blocks add up to more powerful programs. And I look forward to exploring that with you. The final countdown. That's not going in the video. Wait. Just did. Shoot.